There are many things the galaxy has learned to fear. Planet-devouring black holes, sentient tax forms from Sector Thrall, the cursed elevator of the moon Yavisk 12 that never stops at the floor you asked for. But nothing, and this cannot be overstated, nothing terrifies civilized species more than a Deathworlder. Which brings us to the gym. Now, most interspecies gyms are peaceful places. There's a lot of gentle stretching, ambient flute music, and species-specific waivers in case someone's limbs accidentally explode during yoga. The facility on orbital sector C-38 was one such place. A place of sweaty harmony. A place where a six-eyed Varxian could squat beside a gelatinous Unt with mutual respect and only mild dripping. That peace was shattered at precisely 0803 Galactic Standard Time. Receptionist Zalo Braquinth, who had once served in the diplomatic corps and considered himself emotionally robust, was not emotionally prepared for the sound his terminal made. A low, echoing dong, followed by a text alert in angry red letters that simply read, "New member human, Deathworlder." Zalo's 12 pupils contracted so hard they made a sound. The other staff members paused their routines. Someone dropped a resistance orb, which bounced once, twice, and then, rather rudely, exploded. "She's here," whispered the sanitation drone. No one asked how it knew. Drones always know. Then the door opened, and there she was, Brenda. She wasn't glowing. She wasn't armed. She didn't even look particularly dangerous. Just a short, broad-shouldered human woman in a slightly faded NASA hoodie, gym shorts, and sneakers that had definitely seen better centuries. Her ponytail bounced with the confidence of someone who didn't ask for permission, and her duffel bag had the battered charm of someone who once punched a customs officer for trying to inspect her protein powder. "Morning," she said cheerily, walking past Zalo like she'd been here 1,000 times before. Zalo opened his mouth to respond, but the words didn't come. His language centers had temporarily fled to his lower intestine out of self-preservation. Now it should be clarified that Brenda was not particularly aware of the havoc she was causing. On Earth, she was a completely average woman with a fondness for deadlifts and documentaries about extinct megafauna. But to the rest of the galaxy, the words Deathworlder were usually followed by the sound of screaming, explosions, and at least one insurance claim. Brenda just wanted to work out. She headed toward the free weight zone, pausing only to examine the machines with the expression of someone trying to solve a very personal riddle about interdimensional physics. The Varxian lifter, Yolsh, watched her approach the dumbbell rack. He was currently bench-pressing a small hovercar, mostly for show. He flexed casually, as one does when one has 17 biceps. "Need help with the equipment?" he asked. Brenda smiled. "Nope, just warming up." And then she picked up the big one. You know the one, the 280-kilo dumbbell, the one the staff kept mostly as a joke, the one that had previously cracked the floor during a demonstration. Brenda picked it up with one hand, blinked, and switched arms like she was weighing pineapples at the grocery store. Yolsh made a noise that sounded like someone trying to reverse a car with their soul. "Is this the heavy one?" Brenda asked, slightly disappointed. Several species re-evaluated their beliefs about gravity in that moment. Meanwhile, up in the observation lounge, the gym's owner, Mr. Thrum, watched the scene unfold with a mug of kelp coffee in one hand and a deeply unsettled twitch in one of his 4 eyelids. "This," he muttered, "was not in the safety orientation." As Brenda began her warm-up set, warm-up mind you, staff members initiated Protocol 8-11, which mostly involved hiding under desks and praying in languages only mitochondria could hear. The treadmills spontaneously detached from the floor and quietly backed away, and still Brenda lifted, calmly, rhythmically, like gravity was something she allowed to exist. The real panic began when she moved to the leg press machine. No one dared stop her, not even the Snekth war commander who had once bench-pressed a tank for charity. By the time she added her own body weight twice to the press, two species had declared cultural surrender, and the fire suppression system activated itself out of shame. Brenda pulled out her water bottle, took a sip, and said to no one in particular, "I think I'm finally starting to feel it." Everyone else was trying not to vomit. Brenda's second sip of water caused an audible gasp from somewhere near the yoga mats. It wasn't the action itself that terrified the crowd. It was the sheer normality of it, as if the destruction of interspecies morale and physics-based dignity wasn't enough. Now she was hydrating, casually, like she hadn't just undone the self-worth of 8 highly evolved civilizations by doing squats to the rhythm of her own internal playlist. Somewhere in the ceiling, the ventilation system began screaming. Down by the ellipticals, an amphibious diplomat named Plur blinked his horizontal eyelids and whispered, "She's not even sweating." And she wasn't. Brenda was glowing slightly, yes, but that was just the earth-born joy of muscle engagement and possibly mild caffeine overdose. She adjusted her earbuds and moved toward the pull-up bars, completely unaware that several alien species had already declared her a Class 4 existential threat. Now, the pull-up bars on orbital sector C-38 weren't your average human chin-up contraptions. These had been engineered for beings with 4, 6, sometimes 10 limbs, and they could support up to 2 tons of simultaneous gravitational pressure. They were also bolted into the ceiling with screws made of compressed neutronium alloy. Brenda tested the grip with one hand, nodded approvingly, and launched into a set of pull-ups that looked suspiciously like she was trying to leave the station through the roof. After the 3rd rep, the lights flickered. After the 5th, a siren went off in the cargo bay. After the 10th, the entire station rotated 0.3 degrees off-axis. Zarlo, still hiding under the welcome desk, tapped his communicator with a trembling claw. "We may need to notify the Galactic Council." Again. "She's not doing anything wrong," cried Plur, who was now attempting to meditate himself into a state of atomic dispersal. "She's just working out. She broke the gravitational stabilizers with her shoulder blades." At this point, someone tried to speak to Brenda. His name was Drelg, and he was a species known for its diplomatic tact and smooth, respectful approach to sensitive matters. Unfortunately, Drelg was also 2 weeks into a new protein cycle and had recently read an e-book titled "Assertiveness for Warriors: How to Say No Without Vaporizing Anyone." He approached cautiously, like someone sneaking up on a sleeping volcano with a foam bat. "Excuse me, Miss Deathworlder, might I suggest a cool-down period?" Brenda paused, turned, smiled. It was not an aggressive smile. It was not a confrontational smile. It was the kind of smile one gives a small dog that just sneezed in a cute way. "Sure," she said, "just 5 more sets." Drell tried to nod, but his neck had locked from sheer panic. Back at the observation deck, Mr. Thrum was updating the insurance forms again, this time adding a section titled "Acts of Brenda." "She hasn't even touched the sauna yet," he muttered, staring at the glass as if it owed him money. "If she gets in the sauna, I'm calling the military." Brenda, meanwhile, had begun experimenting with a multi-limbed rowing machine. This was an apparatus intended for species that resemble angry squid and scream while exercising. It had never been used properly. Mostly it was decorative. Brenda looked it over, adjusted a few of the gravitational coils, and began rowing with the quiet precision of someone who once paddled a canoe through a hurricane for fun. An alarm went off somewhere on Deck 12. Plur was curled into a ball, softly chanting to himself. "She's a threat to everything," Yolch mumbled from the protein bar, where he was now emotionally eating dried lichen and re-evaluating his life's purpose. "I trained for 200 years. 200! And she comes in here with a hoodie and kills physics." It wasn't just that she was strong, it was that she didn't mean to be. Brenda was polite, calm, pleasantly unaware that her very presence was a constant stress test for structural integrity. When she smiled, it was like watching a black hole politely wink. You knew the danger was there, but it was so friendly. After finishing her final pull-up set, 46, with a pause in the middle to check her smartwatch, Brenda glanced around the gym. She noticed a lack of activity, an unsettling quiet, and many, many eyes. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked. No one answered. Plur just squeaked. And then she said it, the phrase that would echo through the station's historical records for decades to come. "I was going to try the warm-up now." There are phrases in the galactic lexicon that trigger immediate evacuation protocols. Core meltdown, biocontaminant breach, surprise inspection from the Ministry of Fluids. But never had the phrase, "I was going to try the warm-up now," been catalogued as one of them. Until today. Brenda's voice echoed across the gym like a prophecy. The kind that's found on ancient cave walls or whispered by unlicensed oracles in alleyways behind noodle carts. Zalo Braquinth immediately collapsed into a nervous puddle behind the front desk, mumbling something about retirement and soft foods. Plur started hyperventilating through 3 of his gill pockets, and Yolsh, who had once survived a sandstorm on the death moon of Kurak by punching it into submission, began to cry into a towel. Brenda, oblivious, walked toward the stretching mats. "Right," she said, casually removing her hoodie and revealing a tank top with the phrase "killing it, but nicely," across the chest. "Time for mobility." The silence was suffocating. No one breathed. Literally. 3 species began to suffocate from fear-induced apnea and had to be manually resuscitated by the cleaning drone, who now refused payment and requested therapy instead. Mobility drills were, in theory, safe, stretching, gentle lunges, nothing dangerous. But Brenda's idea of a stretch resembled something closer to tactical preparation for orbital invasion. She reached down, touched her toes, and the floor let out a high-pitched crack, not from impact, just from being seen doing that. Then came the lunges. Each step left a micro-dent in the flooring, not because she stomped, but because the gravity itself leaned in to watch. Someone screamed. No one knew who. By the time Brenda began rotating her shoulders, the station's stabilizers hiccuped again. In a corner near the free weights, Drelg began updating his will. He did so using a ceremonial ink pod that only released its contents during moments of extreme despair. Brenda had now triggered it 3 times, and then it happened. The incident, the event now referred to in 14 systems as the snap. It began with a harmless piece of equipment, a foam roller, a human item, imported from Earth. Advertised as a gentle aid for post-workout muscle relaxation. To Brenda, it was part of her routine, a core element of her cool-down. To the station, it was about to become a blunt instrument of trauma. She placed the foam roller on the mat, lowered herself carefully, and applied her body weight across her back with surgical precision. Snap. Not from Brenda, from the roller. It shattered, exploded, detonated into a confetti of foam and shame, launching pieces across the gym like an emotional grenade. Silence, shock, a dripping noise that might have been tears or sweat or both. Brenda blinked, sat up. That's new. She picked up one of the roller fragments, sniffed it, shrugged. Maybe I got heavier. 3 beings fainted immediately. Yolsh stood up suddenly, his breathing erratic, fists clenched. "I can't take it anymore," he roared, voice echoing through the rafters. "We trained, we evolved, we endured centuries of adaptive biology to become peak specimens, and she comes in here with her cheerful tone and her stretching techniques and ruins the entire concept of effort." Brenda raised an eyebrow. "You okay, man?" Yolsh's response was not verbal, it was kinetic, a challenge in the most ancient language of fitness, the attempted liftoff. He grabbed 2 of the heaviest weighted spheres, each roughly the mass of a large boulder, and attempted a double arm press. He got them about 15 centimeters off the ground before his left elbow decided it would rather not be part of this story anymore. Crack! Yolsh screamed. Everyone else screamed with him. It wasn't pain. It was the sheer humiliation of it all. Brenda, without hesitation, walked over and crouched beside him. "You're holding too much tension in your neck," she said, adjusting his shoulder position with clinical kindness. "You gotta breathe through the motion." Then, with one smooth motion, she lifted both spheres from the ground with a grunt of effort and held them aloft. "For real, though," she added, "these are kind of awkward. Do you guys not use chalk?" Mr. Thrum, still upstairs, had now entered what scientists refer to as a full metaphysical crisis. He wasn't even sure if he was a gym owner anymore, or a person, or a concept. "I've seen war," he whispered. "I've seen starships vaporized. I've heard the lament of civilizations as their sons died. But this is worse." "She's stretching." Brenda helped Yolch to a bench and offered him her protein bar. "You'll be fine. Just keep at it." And she meant it. She genuinely meant it, because Brenda didn't come here to intimidate anyone, or to dominate, or to bring a galactic institution to its knees. She just wanted to move better, and maybe hit a new PR. If a single woman could cause a spiritual reckoning among 17 alien species with a foam roller and a polite smile, imagine what she might do with a rowing machine. That was the central concern now circulating among the gym's leadership team. If team is the right word for 4 aliens hiding behind a vending unit, holding a meeting inside a discarded cardboard box labeled "Explosive Bananas Do Not Shake." Mr. Thrum, previously a confident business owner and part-time kettlebell philosopher, had lost all traces of command. His right eye was twitching independently, and he kept mumbling things like revenue stream and emergency gravitational reversal plan into a cup of tea he hadn't made. "We need to contain her," hissed Drelg, his neck still locked in a permanent expression of terrorized diplomacy. "She's not malicious, but she's a walking entropy field in sneakers." "I say we just eject the whole gym," shouted Plur, whose idea of problem-solving involved high-yield explosives and poorly translated legislation. "She can't break the machines if there are no machines." "We can't eject the gym," Thrum snapped. "That's page 47 of the emergency manual, and we haven't finished filling out page 12. Meanwhile, on the gym floor, Brenda was examining the alien equivalent of a cable crossover machine. It had 17 adjustable levers, 6 stabilizing arms, and a safety warning that glowed red when read too fast. Brenda studied it the way a human might study an IKEA manual written in Latin. "Let's see what this bad boy does," she said cheerfully. The machine, known as the Glornith Multilift 9000, had never been properly used. Most clients avoided it after the incident with the triple-chinned ambassador and the irreversible spinal spiral. Brenda adjusted the levers, stepped inside, and began a routine that no engineer had anticipated, no designer had imagined, and no insurance policy had dared to cover. It was graceful, efficient, terrifying. The machine, to its eternal shame, began making noises, not mechanical ones, emotional ones. Groans of uncertainty, whimpers of self-doubt. It trembled beneath her rhythm. And then, as if to emphasize its surrender, the console blinked and displayed a message in every available galactic dialect. "Why?" She grunted through the final rep, released the grips, and stepped away with that glow of honest fatigue. "Solid piece of equipment," she said. "Bit squeaky, though." The gym was no longer functioning as a gym. It had become a theater of witnessing. The regulars weren't training. They were hiding behind protein barrels, peeking around resistance bands, clutching foam rollers like spiritual totems. Even the background music had stopped, as if Spotify itself couldn't bear to soundtrack this level of existential obliteration. And then came the knock, a heavy ceremonial knock at the outer hatch, followed by a voice so deep it made the floorboards hum. "We come in peace." Mostly. Zarlo, finally regaining motor function, answered through the intercom. "Identify yourselves." "This is the Galactic Fitness Regulatory Commission," said the voice. We were alerted by 17 consecutive Level 9 violation alerts, and one Yelp review labeled unholy. The hatch hissed open. In marched the inspectors, 4 beings in identical regulation sweatsuits carrying clipboards that seemed to hum with bureaucratic fury. Their leader, a tall, rail-thin figure named Inspector Delix, adjusted his glasses with a finger that looked carved from legalese. "We understand," he said in a voice like freshly waxed marble, "that a Deathworlder is performing unsanctioned kinetic rituals on these premises." "She's working out," whimpered Zalo. "Working out?" Delix echoed. "Or initiating a localized reality collapse via improper warm-up technique." Brenda, now stretching her calves near the window, waved cheerfully. "Hey, y'all, you here for the spin class?" Delix turned to the others. "Begin assessment." The inspectors spread out, scanning every surface with their legal clips, muttering in tones that sounded like planetary foreclosures. They approached the Glornith Multilift 9000, which was now softly weeping. One poked it. The machine sparked and rebooted with a loading bar titled Rebuilding Confidence 3%. Delix made a note. Brenda approached, towel over one shoulder, and took a sip from her water bottle. "You guys in charge of gym maintenance or something?" "We are in charge," Delix replied, "of everything that prevents the universe from dissolving into unlicensed muscular chaos." Brenda blinked. "Neat." The inspectors huddled, whispered, argued in numbers. Then Delix stepped forward again, pointing his clipboard at her like a weapon forged from middle management. "We are placing this gym under probation. Effective immediately." Brenda raised an eyebrow. "What did I do?" "Nothing," Delix said, eyes twitching. "And that's the problem." Brenda stared at the clipboard like it had just tried to insult her breakfast choices. "Probation?" she asked, towel still slung over her shoulder like an indifferent flag of war. "For working out?" "No," Delix corrected, tapping the edge of his clipboard with a finger that gave off the scent of cold coffee and fear. "For not working out within acceptable dimensional limits. Your routine has generated 3 minor gravitational anomalies, disrupted one species' mating cycle, and shattered the emotional integrity of the Glornith Multilift 9000. Brenda tilted her head. "Wait, was that the machine that whimpered when I touched it?" "Yes," said another inspector flatly. "It's currently on sick leave." Brenda gave a small nod of respect. Poor guy. Behind her, Yolsh was curled up in a fetal position on a massage table, being fanned by 2 trembling drones. He had not spoken since Brenda deadlifted the equivalent of a diplomatic cruiser. Every time she stretched, his left eye twitched like a Morse code distress signal. The inspectors continued to survey the gym, scribbling violations onto forms with pens that looked sharp enough to cut through egos. Mr. Thrum, having somewhat regained vertical posture, shuffled forward. "Please. You can't shut us down. This gym is the only neutral workout zone within 3 parsecs. We've hosted Grivnak Strongman Qualifiers, the 11th Sector Cross-Zonal Mindful Combat Pilates Marathon, and a birthday party for Emperor Klax's personal chiropractor." Delix didn't blink. "That's precisely the issue. Your facility is too vulnerable." "To humans?" Thrum asked. "To Brenda," Delix replied, as if saying the name triggered a muscle cramp. "She is statistically improbable. We ran the numbers. They begged us to stop." Brenda looked a little embarrassed. "I really didn't mean to break anything. I'm just following a program I found online." Plur, who hadn't spoken in a while, burst out from behind a stationary bike. "Where? Where online? What kind of site teaches you how to do a Turkish get-up while balancing a cosmic dumbbell and listening to Fleetwood Mac?" Brenda shrugged. "Planetfit.net." A silence fell over the inspectors. Delix typed rapidly into his clipboard, eyes narrowing. "That website," he said, "was banned in 47 systems after a plethorian teenager dislocated 6 wings trying to mimic a burpee." Brenda sipped her water again. "You have to scale to your own level." "We don't have levels for this," Delix snapped. "You bent the quantum foam of the gym's east wall. It's puckering." And indeed, the wall now had a subtle inward curve, as if it had witnessed something so intense it tried to recoil into non-existence. Yolch groaned softly from his massage table. "She asked if I used chalk," he whispered, "like I was her equal." Zarlo approached Brenda cautiously, clutching a small data pad. "Look, maybe we just need to calibrate the gym differently. Adjust for human musculature, maybe install anti-bracing pads, reinforce the confidence zones." "Confidence zones?" Brenda asked. "It's where most clients stand to look like they're about to lift something heavy." Brenda's eyes twinkled. "You guys have designated posing areas." Plur cut in again, now with a towel tied around his head like a desperate monk. "You don't understand. We don't train like you do. We don't pursue pain. We don't wake up at 5 a.m. and think, let me rupture my glutes for personal growth. That's a human thing." Brenda took a thoughtful breath. I guess it is." She didn't sound proud. She didn't sound smug. She sounded like someone who had just realized why other people weren't fighting for squat rack availability before sunrise. Delix raised his clipboard again. "Enough. We've made our assessment. Unless this individual ceases all kinetic activity within this facility, the gym shall be rendered inoperable." "You're gonna shut down an entire gym because I stretched too hard?" Brenda asked. "You rearranged time in the sauna chamber," Delix barked. "There is now a version of Plur in there who hasn't been born yet." Brenda raised both hands. Okay, let's not get dramatic." And that, right there, is when everything went very dramatic. Because right then, precisely at that moment, the gym's lights dimmed, the floor shook, and the intercom sparked to life. "Warning," said the voice of the station's AI. "Energy surge detected. Source, spinning room." Zarlo paled. No, she hasn't gone in there yet, has she?" Thrum dropped his tea. "She didn't even get to warm up with spinning." Delix's hands trembled. "What fresh hell have we brought upon ourselves?" Brenda frowned. "Wait, you guys have spinning bikes here too? Oh man, I love spinning." And with that she turned, still towel over her shoulder, and calmly walked toward the door. The inspectors didn't move. No one moved. The room fell into a reverent silence, the kind reserved for solar eclipses or sudden contact with godlike beings, because now, finally, Brenda was going to really get started. The spinning room had not been used in 12 cycles. Officially, it was under maintenance. Unofficially, it was haunted by the memory of speed. The last species to attempt a class in there, 6-legged creatures called Velunics, had all spontaneously molted from the sheer intensity of rotational dread. The lights flickered as Brenda approached the door. It hissed open like it was trying to warn her or beg her to turn back. Inside, a dozen top-of-the-line gravity-assisted spinning bikes stood in perfect rows, gleaming with ominous readiness. The air smelled of stale ambition and lingering trauma. Brenda stepped in, hands on hips. "All right, cardio time." And just like that, reality tensed. Zarlo poked his head around the corner, whispering through clenched mandibles. "Do we stop her?" "How?" Thrum snapped, sweat now forming on every square centimeter of his body. "We can't stop someone who stretches the fabric of causality during warm-ups. What do you expect me to do? Offer her a cancellation fee?" Plur had begun crafting a will using dumbbell chalk and the back of a protein bar wrapper. Yolch was muttering a prayer in Varxian that translated loosely to, "I accept my inferiority." Inside the spinning room, Brenda selected a bike. Not the fanciest, not the biggest. Just one that looked like it wasn't going to explode from sheer intimidation. She adjusted the seat, mounted with the ease of someone who'd cycled through volcanic ash storms just to make it to work on time, and tapped the start button. The interface lit up, select intensity level. Brenda scrolled past beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Then she passed veteran, champion, and are you sure? She stopped at the final option, Deathworld mode. Her finger hovered over it. Then she tapped it. The room screamed. Not audibly, but in the sudden, sickening lurch of the air itself. Gravity shifted. The bikes, previously inert machines, awoke like ancient beasts being summoned back into motion. The resistance dials spun of their own accord. The LED display flashed a warning that no one had programmed into it. "You have chosen poorly." Brenda began to pedal. At first it was rhythmic, calm, fluid. Then the bike started to fight back. The resistance surged. The gyros activated. The rear stabilizers fired up with a low hum that turned into a growl. Brenda grinned. "Now that's more like it." From the hallway, the inspectors watched in disbelief. One of them whispered, "The pedals! They're glowing." Delix lowered his clipboard slowly. "That shouldn't be possible." Inside the room, Brenda leaned forward and began to accelerate. The wheels spun so fast they began to warp the light around them. The walls trembled. A motivational poster on the far wall, reading "Push your limits," spontaneously burst into flames. The air filled with the scent of ozone and overly ambitious citrus. Brenda was smiling. To her, this was peace, this was meditation, this was fun. The AI's voice returned, this time with a nervous tone. "Warning, station core temperature rising, power grid overload imminent. Please reconsider your choices." Brenda closed her eyes and kept pedaling. Sweat glistened on her brow. Her breathing was steady, centered, and then, suddenly, the entire station flickered, power surged, gravity wobbled, time did something very illegal in the corner. A few gym-goers began floating mid-air, their limbs flailing in zero-G confusion. Drelg tried to file a complaint mid-flight, but lost his stylus to a vortex of kinetic shame. Yolsch, still on the massage table, opened one eye. "She's transcending." Zarlo dropped his datapad. "She's becoming the bike." Then, with no warning whatsoever, the spinning room went silent. The door hissed open. A wave of steam rolled out like theatrical fog from a very determined stage play. Brenda stepped out, towel over her neck, calm, centered, glowing slightly, but only in the metaphysical sense. "Well," she said, "that was great, really got my heart rate up." Behind her the bike sparked once, let out a long sigh, and disintegrated into dust. Delix opened his mouth to speak, but only a quiet wheeze came out. "Hey," Brenda said, brushing hair from her forehead. "Do you guys have a smoothie bar? I could really go for something with peanut butter right now." No one moved. No one spoke. The AI, in a final act of desperation, whispered one word across the entire sound system: mercy. The smoothie bar, tucked in the back corner of the gym behind the emergency oxygen station and an unused Zen garden, had never seen action like this. Its usual clientele consisted of mildly dehydrated diplomats and lizard-like sprinters who considered kale a delicacy. The blender had 3 settings: blend, pulse, and apologize. Brenda strolled up, radiant with post-spinning tranquility, and scanned the menu. You got anything with peanut butter and, emotional closure?" The attendant, a small translucent being named Fen, trembled behind the counter. "We have a reckoning recovery shake. Banana, protein, almond milk, and regrets." "Perfect," Brenda beamed. As Fen prepared the drink with shaking tendrils, the rest of the gym tried to recover from what could only be described as an existential hit session. Plur was kneeling in front of the Glornith Multilift 9000, whispering apologies in broken binary. Yolsch had disappeared under a pile of towels and was muttering something about the softness being safe. Drelg was on his 4th anxiety report, writing faster than the datapad could process. Each document ended with the same word, typed in all caps: her. Upstairs, the inspectors were in full damage control mode. Delix had stopped writing completely. He was now just staring at his clipboard like it had personally betrayed him. "She wasn't even at full exertion," he whispered. Another inspector nodded solemnly. "We ran the surveillance footage through the kinetic resonance filter. Her heart rate never exceeded 78 BPM. That's resting. She was resting. Did we just witness a casual workout, or the end of structured exercise as we know it?" murmured another, eyes wide with unblinking horror. Meanwhile, Brenda sat at a table near the smoothie bar, sipping from a cup larger than her head and looking deeply satisfied. "You know," she said to no one in particular, "this place has great vibes once you get past the panic." The panic was still ongoing. Somewhere, the AI was attempting to reroute life support away from the weight room in a desperate bid to cool down the scorched dignity of the equipment. The rowing machine had filed for early retirement. The resistance bands were found tied in a noose formation. Even the yoga mats had curled up at the edges like frightened animals. A holographic emergency session of the Galactic Fitness Regulatory Commission was now in progress. Delix was broadcasting live from the locker room, his hairline visibly receding with each second. "Proposal," he said, breathing heavily into the transmitter. "We declare humans a kinetic anomaly and classify their workout routines under warfare protocols." There was a long silence from the distant council, then a reply. "Do they know they're doing it?" Delix glanced down at Brenda, now offering to share her shake with a cleaning drone. "No, that's the worst part," the council murmured. Strategies were whispered. Several species tried to recall whether they'd ever seen a human actually try to dominate someone through strength. They hadn't. That made it worse. So much worse. Back in the gym, Brenda tossed her empty smoothie cup into the recycling chute and stood up with a stretch so fluid it made 4 people whimper involuntarily. "Well," she said, "I think I'm good for today. Thanks, everyone." Wait, you're leaving?" Thrum blurted, stumbling forward with the energy of a man just pulled from the edge of the abyss. "Yeah," she nodded. "Don't want to overdo it. Gotta let the muscles recover. But you... He gestured at the ruins, the warped floor, the melted spin bike, the lingering scent of roasted ambition. "This was your recovery session." Brenda gave a sheepish smile. "Yeah, just some active rest. Real workouts tomorrow." And with that, she slung her gym bag over her shoulder and walked toward the exit. The entire gym watched her go in absolute silence. Even the lights dimmed out of respect. As she passed the reception desk, she gave Zalo a cheerful wave. "See you next week." Zalo's hand twitched. He didn't wave back. He was too busy rethinking his career. The door closed behind her. Everyone exhaled. The AI restarted itself. A weight fell over the room, a collective realization that everything had changed. Not because a war had been declared, not because anyone had died, but because Brenda had trained. And tomorrow she'd be back. The gym remained frozen for a full 6 minutes after Brenda's departure. Not metaphorically, literally. The ambient temperature dropped by several degrees, as if the universe itself had decided to chill out in her absence. No one moved. No one dared. Yolsh finally peeked from beneath his towel nest. Is it over?" Plur responded with a shaky nod, though it was unclear whether he was agreeing or convulsing. Zalo sat behind the front desk, eyes unfocused, stroking his reception terminal like a wounded animal. I saw her lift a plasma weight stack with one arm while yawning. Yawning! I think I forgot what gravity feels like. Thrum stood in the center of the gym, surrounded by the collapsed remains of his once proud equipment. His shirt had untucked itself in protest. His hair stood at odd angles. His mind was broken, but something deeper was brewing beneath the surface, an emotion he hadn't felt in years. Respect, with a side of pure, distilled panic. "She came here," he whispered, voice hoarse, "just to recover. To recover." The inspectors, meanwhile, had barricaded themselves in the locker room and were broadcasting an emergency memorandum to all fitness facilities within 20 light years. The document, titled Brenda Protocol, advised against hosting human clients without proper shielding, reinforced existential safeguards, and mandatory therapy staff on site. Back on the gym floor, a lone cleaning drone hovered up to the destroyed spinning bike and let out a soft mechanical sigh. It beeped twice, activated its memory core, and began recording. Archival footage, Day 1. Subject, Deathworlder. Impact, absolute. The footage would later be classified as level black, restricted from public access to prevent widespread inferiority complexes. Plur finally stood. We can't just pretend this didn't happen. The galaxy needs to know. They deserve to know. Know what? Zalo asked. That a woman in gym shorts made 17 species reconsider the concept of effort? That we've all been exercising wrong since the dawn of cardio? Plur shook his head. No. That they exist. That Earth's people. They train like war is recreational. Delix emerged from the locker room, his once pristine clipboard now cracked. I'm recommending we reclassify Deathworlders entirely. Not as warriors. Not as threats. What then? Thrum asked. As a phenomenon. Something that just happens to you while you're minding your own business. Outside, the stars twinkled with ignorant peace. Inside, the gym slowly rebooted itself. Machines groaned back to life. Mats unfurled with caution. The dumbbells whispered warnings to each other. No one dared touch the Multilift 9000. It had gone completely silent, its console displaying only one message: error, confidence not found. By the end of the day, a small plaque had been installed above the spin room door. It read, "Here pedaled one who did not need permission." Staff began whispering her name with reverence. Brenda became a training legend. Workout programs were revised. Machines were retrofitted with panic buttons. One alien began a religion centered on her warm-up routine. Zalo started sketching a new logo for the gym. It was a simple silhouette of a ponytail, mid-swing, above the phrase, "Fear the rest day." And then came the final, terrifying update. Brenda's membership profile lit up on Zalo's terminal. A small green notification pulsed gently, innocently. Class booked, Tuesday. Strength training. Yolsh fainted instantly. Plur muttered something about interdimensional relocation. Delix simply walked into the nearest supply closet and closed the door behind him. Thrum, still standing amid the ruins, gave a single, slow nod. There was no stopping her. There was no preparing for her. There was only acceptance. And maybe, if the galaxy was lucky, less core work next time.